So I guess I want first your reaction, Hal, to the very fact that this court ruling happened. It appeared to surprise even the government.
I think we were all a bit surprised by it, considering how exhaustive the review of Trans Mountain had been. But in hindsight, I guess there's a couple of big issues here that we should have seen coming. One is the consultation with Indigenous people. During the Harper government's approval of Northern Gateway, the courts ruled that consultation could not be carried out by the companies, but also had to be carried out by the Government of Canada. And when I was at TransCanada, I saw that as a flaw in the process, that the government had delegated to the companies to get Aboriginal support for projects, when in fact it's up to the government to do that consultation. Mm-hmm. So the government then attempted to do that in the case of Trans Mountain with a third round of Indigenous consultation, which interestingly, even though it was exhaustive and many hundreds of meetings were held and many contact points were made, the federal court decided that the consultation was inappropriate and inadequate, and so here we are, yet another round required.
And of course, now we are the proud owners of a $4.5 billion asset that we can't do anything with. Are you optimistic that this next round will be speedy enough to get things moving?
No, I'm not optimistic at all. I think the process is fraught with uncertainty. Amanda, the issue is we've really struggled with the regulatory process in Canada that's gotten steadily worse over the last 20 years. And we've got to remember that Canada's pipeline companies are among the best in the world and consistently build pipelines that meet the highest environmental standards. And we do everything we can to minimize impact on Indigenous and other local communities. The issue today is that the pipeline development process is so far behind that we have several 100,000 barrels a day backed up into Alberta. And this hurts not just the pipeline companies, it dramatically hurts the production sector in Western Canada. We're suffering from extremely wide differentials, and we have a crisis here in Western Canada in the energy industry, and I'm concerned the federal government is not taking that crisis seriously enough.
I was reminded by a fellow journalist in a piece they wrote this week of Enbridge's Hardisty line, I think back in 2009-10, that took less than a year from contemplation to oil flowing through a pipeline. Obviously, the changes that have been put in place here are designed to increase scrutiny around the environment and, importantly, and we are seeing more and more law around this, consultation with First Nations and Indigenous groups. But have we gone too far? Have we gone off the rails?
I think we are off the rails. I think, first of all, we need to recognize the environmental track record of Canada's energy sector and the pipeline sector in particular. When you look at the major pipelines that cross this country and export our oil and gas into the United States, they have been almost flawlessly built and operated. Yes, there have been operational oil spills from time to time, but they've been cleaned up very quickly. And we have no major lasting environmental impacts from the construction and operation of pipelines either in Western Canada, in Eastern Canada, or into the U.S. So I think all of that has kind of been lost. We've lost sight of the fact that our companies here, both on the production side and the pipeline side, are among the best in the world. And we're creating all of these hurdles that hold them back. I think, Amanda, this is troubling when we recognize that the energy sector, from upstream oil and gas production through to delivery of product to North American markets, is the largest and most valuable industry that Canada has. And we have this tremendous resource base. There are parties that would like us to slow down development or stop it entirely. We need to recognize they have a special agenda, but I think we need to refocus on just how important this industry is to Canada.
If you were putting money to work today, is this a country that you would try to build a project like this in?
Amanda, the really scary thing is that Bill C-69 that's coming into force probably within the next 12 months is going to dramatically and very painfully increase the hurdles that pipeline companies need to go through. And from my perspective, there's no good reason for it. We have tried as an industry to convince the government to take a look at these projects early on and send us a signal as to whether the government supports them. Does Canada want the Energy East pipeline? Does Canada want the Trans Mountain pipeline or Northern Gateway? tell us these things before billions of dollars are spent on very detailed regulatory reviews. The government declined to do that with Bill C-69. Instead of a two-stage process, they created two parallel processes, each of which has no end in sight. And I do worry that companies like Enbridge and TransCanada are heavily focusing their investment in the U.S. today. And I don't blame them. As a shareholder of both companies, I'm happy they are, because it's literally getting almost impossible to get something done in Canada.